My name is Vladymir Ulogov. I'm from Zabbix New York office, and the topic of my speech will be beyond the loadable modules. How to extend Zabbix agent and potentially server for fun and profit. Hope you had a really restful evening and night, because we will talk a bit about software development, and it will be some examples of the code for you to view. So don't be afraid. So I will talk a little bit about what is the Zabbix Loadable Module, in case some of you never experienced this great Zabbix feature, which has been with us since version 2.2. Then I will talk a bit about what is the problem with the Zabbix Loadable Module. Why this solution is not for everyone. Then I'll try to answer this question, what we can do to make the Loadable Module solution for everyone. I will talk about the requirements for the solution. Then probably the longest part of my talk is how it's implemented. Then I'll show you what you can do with this. And we'll talk about performance and convenience, which you guys can achieve by using that solution. So, Zabbix Loadable Module, it's a great and simple and elegant way to extend your agent in a server. Essentially, this is the shared library, which is loaded by Zabbix component during the startup, and become a part of the Zabbix component address space, and executing the code inside the Loadable Module. It's like executing the functions and the code inside the Zabbix server or an agent itself. So there is no slowdown, there is no delays. Why do you want to use the loadable modules instead of running external script? The answer is security and performance, mostly performance. So, if at some point you start to process a lot of custom metric collection for your application or for your systems, and you start to develop a lot of scripts which are responsible to collect those metrics, and it's inevitable that at some point you will realize the user params or running external scripts from the Zabbix is not that great, because performance is not good. And since 2.2, you do have an option as the loadable module. And with the loadable module, ID is powerful, and the correct C code will allow you to do whatever you like. But this solution is not for everyone, because let's face the truth, most of us nowadays are not C developers. And this is pre-requirements for one of the pre-requirements if you want to develop your own loadable module. And even if you can develop the code in C, it is oftentimes that you cannot afford yourself to spend the time to develop and own the C code. And another problem is, even if you can afford yourself to develop and maintain the C code, it is sometimes, and actually it's oftentimes, that you do not have a time to properly code in C, because you, while you busy monitoring system, you're often on the deadlines. You just don't have a time. So, what is the solution for that problem? And obviously, a solution for this problem is use other language than C to develop your metric collection code. And if you want a performance, you don't want to run this as through the user parameters or as external scripts, you need to embed this language in the Zabbix agent or Zabbix server through the loadable modules, through the use of the loadable modules. The requirements. Part of your solution will be to use any RAD language, and the RAD goes as the Rapid Application Development Language. Anything high level with the good library will do. The language shall provide rich data types, object-oriented capabilities is the nice feature to have because it will provide you pretty good flexibility in your development. This language shall have embeddable and simple APIs. So even if you have a really great language, if the language is not embeddable, you cannot use this language with the loadable module. The language of your choice shall provide you a good library, which shall help you to achieve what you're looking for. One of the most important and often overlooked items, this language shall be accepted in your company by its lead architect. I've seen a lot of disasters when the people just pick up the language they like, start to develop a lot of code in this language, and then they've been told, sorry, this language is not approved, you shall redo everything in approved language. So if you do something like this, please be sure you consult with your lead architect in your company. The next requirements. The language shall be mature, well developed, documented, and you shall have more than a single person who knows how to code in this language. Well, even if you find the great language for your needs, which helping you to collect the metrics you're looking for, if this language is not mature, if it's just like one of the earlier releases, probably that is not a great idea to use that. And the note about more than one single developer around, this means it's good to have more than a single developer who can create and read your code around you, around your group. Next requirements. If any of your team members never been exposed to this language shall be simple enough for them to grasp the concept. The language shall be fast enough for your purposes, because, well, the reason is obvious. Your metric collection code shall be fast. Important and often overlooked, your architecture and your language shall be approved by your InfoSec team. So talk to your company security people and let them know what you're doing. And another important thing, this language that you choose to develop your metric collection shall exist for all the platforms you are planning to use. And in my case, and I will base the rest of my presentation on the fact that I choose the Python as my language of choice because A, it was one of the approved languages, B, I have decent experience with this one, and it's match pretty much all requirements I have, and this language do have a rich library of the functions and the classes which can help me and pretty much anyone else to create the metric collection code. So what is the design decisions and the problems we need to resolve if we want to embed pretty much any language, not necessary to be a Python? First, design decision, how to do the data conversion. Zabbix treats the data one way, and any interpreter and Python, for example, treats the data in totally different way. The second problem is how to initialize and deinitialize interpreter inside your code. Third problem is how to route the call from the Zabbix to your function or to your object written in the Python. And yes, how to finalize. And before you begin, I would like to point you on how to set up your development environment. If you want to create any Python extension or any Python development code, you need to install Python devel or similar RPM or deb package which exists for your system. If you choose not to install the package, you need to download Python source code and install the Python from the sources. And it's free. And the criteria before you continue, if you can compile any Python C coded extension, you are fine, you can continue. And in addition to this three requirements for the Python development environment, you shall have Zabbix source code available. So, and the pre-requirement, if you can compile Zabbix on your system, then you are fine, you can continue with developing Zabbix Loadable Module. So let's begin. We will review some of the C functions which you probably need to recognize if at any time you will look at the module source code. First is API which is used to conversion data to and from Python. PY string from string. It's need to be added that I already mentioned the Python interpret data completely different from C and from Zabbix. In the Python, all the data type exists as the references to PY object. And the Python is garbage collected language. I will talk about garbage collection in the future. So if you have a C character string, if you want to convert it to the Python, you need to call py string from string function. If you want to convert longs, floats, and if you want to parse the arguments, that's the Python C API functions you will be using. If you want to pass the parameters or the arguments to the Python function, and we will talk about Python functions in a second, you need to form a tuple. Tuple in the Python world is fixed size array. So, and that Python C call ptuple new will create that array for you. And the ptuple set item will set item in the position inside that array. So that's how you do the data conversion to the Python. Zabbix API you do need to know for the data conversion. This is the Zabbix side of the problem. And this is pretty straightforward. In the Zabbix, if you want to return any data from your code back to the Zabbix, you are going to use any of those three functions. Set UI64 result, set DBL result, and set a string result. If you want to pass any message from your code back to the Zabbix, you're going to use set MSG result. And if you want to read the parameter which Zabbix passes to your code, you are going to use set rparam function. Okay, the next, enough talk about data conversion. Next step is initialization and finalization. If you want to your Python environment to be able to execute the code, you need to run the following routine to initialize the Python environment. First, set the program name. And in my example, in the module, I set the program name as Zabbix Agent D, for example. Next, you run Python initialize, and in fact, it's probably be a better idea to run py initialize ex and pass as the parameter 0, which will prevent initializing Python exit hooks, which will be nice for the Zabbix if you don't do that. Next function is py initialized. That way you check if your Python environment is successfully initialized. And when you done work with the Python, py finalize will clear up your interpreter environment, your embedded interpreter environment. So next, let's review really quick the Zabbix API, which you are going to need to write your module. Basically, it's two main functions. It's two main functions. Zabbix Module init. This function is called when your module is loaded by Zabbix component. Function returns either Zabbix Module OK or Zabbix Module fail, and all the Python initializing routines are called from Zabbix Module init. So that's where we initialize our embedded interpreter. And as the part of the implementation of the embedded interpreter, I'm calling function main from the module Zabbix startup.py during the module initialization in case if you need to run any Python, any initialization code written in Python during the module startup. Zabbix module init, it's a posit of the Zabbix module init. It's called when the module is unloaded. Generally, that's if you stop your Zabbix agent or the server. Also, it returns Zabbix module OK or Zabbix module fail. And during the module shutdown, I'm calling function main from the module Zabbix finish.py. So all deinitialization code, all the Python side deinitialization code shall be going to that function. And I already mentioned that the Python is the garbage collected language. And the life of the Python objects are controlled by a number of the references. If you create an object, you need to increase the reference. If you free object, you need to decrease the reference, and that's how you return the reference count. So how it's implemented, the Python API you need to know to working with the modules. So py import module. This function importing the Python module, returning the reference on the module, and you can work with this reference from inside your code. Py object get attribute string. When you get your reference to the module, using this function you can find the function which is implemented within the module. So that's how I referencing, for example, functions main during the startup and the shutdown. And py eval call object, that's how you passing your execution from the C to the Python code after you import the module and get the reference on the object. And one Zabbix function to talk about is the Zabbix module item list. It returns the list of the implemented metric key within your module. The Python module I implemented returns you 3 metrics: python.ping, python.version, and the metric called py, and it passes call from the Zabbix to the Python. And the function we just discussed returns to the Zabbix the array of the ZBX metric keys, and in this array we pass the information about name, flag, if we pass any parameters to the function or not, reference to the C function, and the test parameter. That is an example. So, I'm sorry. Name of our metric, C-coded function, parameters, and default test parameters. So this is how we passing call from Zabbix to the Python on the C level. So here is easy to see that I'm importing the module. I'm creating the tuple which is used to pass the parameters. I am setting the tuple members from the parameters I got from the Zabbix. Then I'm resolving the attribute inside the module, and I'm calling the object. And here, for example, you see I'm dereferencing the Python objects I don't need any longer, and this piece of code is responsible for returning data back to Zabbix. So this is the Python side of the how to route call from the Zabbix to Python. Here is we're detecting if we're passing a function. So if you define within the module function A, B, and C, you can call it by name of the module dot name of the function. That you finding the module. Then here you checking if your module is in directory PyModules. You probably do not want to execute any other Python modules, like for example from your default locations. Then you load module, and then you apply the call. And creating metric collection, it could be something simple. So for example, you create the file called zbx_time.py, import the module time, and you return the current clock of the computer. And after you place this file into in directory PyModules, which is nested in the same as the subdirectory of where your loadable module is installed, and then you call your agent and pass the key py and zbx time, this module will be called and you will receive the timestamp. But your metric collection could be not as trivial as the previous one. For example, this shows that you can use whatever capabilities Python offers to you. You can create your code using Python classes, inheritance, pretty much whatever you like. And this example module will allow you to query the process list and search, return the number of the specific processes where the command line follows in the specific pattern. And in this example, when you call this module, let's say the code in af_ps.py module, you searching for the number of the SSHD processes attached to the pseudo terminals. And performance, let's talk about, a bit about this one. As in my test, I'm just dumping the series of the queries of the metrics from the passive agent using Zabbix get. And I'm using the same code, the same module, and the first test I'm using, you're all familiar with the user parameter, and I call the Python and I'm executing that module through the user parameters, or I'm accessing this module through embedded interpreter. And this is the clear result. If I'm issuing 10 calls, it takes me only like roughly 1/100th of the second to handle 10 calls. And 1/10th of the second if I'm using user parameters. And the more calls I routed, the slower, the more time our user parameters will take. Average seconds per request. If I am using embedded Python through the Loadable Module, I usually get performance for this simple call, which returns, as I remind you, just the system clock, is 1/100th of the second per 10 calls. And it's a completely different story when I'm using user parameters. And this graph shows you that this is a response time as per call for Loadable Module, and if I'm using user parameters. And this shows you the module, and as the user parameter doesn't introduce any disturbance or any unusual behavior when you call the, for example, series of metrics. So, what you get an outcome of that? You are using rapid application development language to create your custom metrics. Then, as I mentioned before, you can use any Python features I am aware of. And again, at this point, I'm not aware of any restrictions. But your metric collection code shall be efficient and quick. Remember, if you are taking like half an hour to collect your metric, you shouldn't use that way to do that. So your metric collection shall be quick. And the test shows if you are embedding interpreter inside your Zabbix agent. In my example, you gain about 5 to 6 times faster response time when you're collecting the metrics. And of course, your results may vary, and your metric collection will be as fast your host can compute and efficient your code. Here is the where you can find the source code of this module. Please feel free to download it and try. And if you have any problems or successes, please let me know. And I'm ready for any questions. Yes. The question was, is there any specific version of the Python you can use? I tested with the Python 2.6 and 2.7. I generally took whatever distribution are using, and I tested with the CentOS 6, CentOS 6.5, and CentOS 7. So I don't have an answer for you if it will work on Python 2.5. Most likely, why not? As long as the Python C API isn't changed, you will be fine. Sir? The question was when it will be natively supported by Zabbix. I don't have an answer on that question. but please feel free to download the source code. Again, I would love to answer your question, but I'm afraid this is a question to Alexei. Is he ever will be part of the Zabbix distribution?
Well, I think that the Python integration specifically, the kind of Python-specific code will never be part of a Zabbix distribution. What will be the part of the Zabbix distribution is infrastructure to write a code in a higher level languages, including Python, but not necessarily Python. Yeah. So.
Will there be a place where existing people have written these Python modules, you can actually download them? Will they be available on the share.zabbix.com?
I hope so. At this present point, whatever I wrote, it's the examples of the modules are on this GitHub place, but I don't mind if we will ever have a special category for this type of the modules on share.zabbix.com. I think I will work and will be sure that category will be created. Okay. Okay. If the question was, correct me if I get your question like in the wrong way, is there, if it will be any way supported that you can access Zabbix internal functions from that extension Python code? The answer on this question lies generally in the earlier part of the talk, I talked that loadable modules are part of the component. So on the C level, you can call whatever whatever Zabbix function you want. So you already within the address space of Zabbix component. As far as I know, currently there is no callback. I experimented and I created the experimental Python module in which I wrap a ZBX log function. So you can, from your Python code, then you can write the strings to the Zabbix logs. And that at this point, as far as I went. How it will be in the future, it is a matter of the discussion.
Environment you recommend on these techniques because of, is that really the bottleneck?
Well, what kind of environment? The simple answer on that is, if you start to have more than, let's say, 5 metrics which you write your custom code to collect to, and you start to query them more often than once in a few minutes, if you need to integrate your custom application or probably your custom systems, pretty much anywhere where you use the custom in-house developed code, this module will help. As far as I know, this module is used in at least, I know the numbers at least from one of the companies. And this is running, the Zabbix server running about 700 VPS, and about 600 VPS are managed by that module.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think if there will be any further questions, we can take them offline. Thank you for your attention, and Enjoy the conference.